Welcome back to my channel. I'm Tora and my pronouns are they, them. Today is my first Book Talk Wednesday, which is a weekly special where I am going to talk about a book that entails either LGBTQ+ or mental health sort of topics. The first book I'm going to review is The Savvy Ally by Jeannie Gainsburg. Disclaimer, these are my opinions. You don't have to agree with me. We're allowed to have different opinions. This book is about how to be an ally, and the prologue gives a good idea of who this author is and how she got to where she is. It speaks about how she got an LGBTQ+ book, and it inspired her to take action. She talks about her younger life and gives you an insight as to why she wrote this book. It's very interesting to see her younger life. She was always accepting, but she never thought that she would have to fight for our rights. Until she read that book that her husband got for her. Chapter 1, Getting Started. It starts out with a thank you, and explaining that this book is how to be an ally, not why. It explains it'll be covering 4 broader topics in its sections: becoming knowledgeable allies, building skills to have respectful conversations, taking action to create more inclusive spaces, and allying responsibility. She explains the importance of allies, expresses that you don't have to be perfect, and also says she'll include stories from her queer friends. Practice makes pretty darn good is a quote from this book, and I really, really like that. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Practice makes it pretty darn good. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay as long as you're trying. In this episode, I don't have the time to go through the entire book, so we'll just be going through the Becoming Knowledgeable Allies section. Chapter 2. The glossary is at the back. This is the start of the Becoming Knowledgeable Allies section. There's a glossary of LGBTQ+ terms at the back of this book, which I think is actually very good. I liked reading the definitions. They're very simplified, but they get the point across, and if you had no idea what any of these terms were and you were reading the glossary, it would help you understand. Now, of course, you can search more into it to get a bigger, broader, more inclusive definition, but I think that for what it is, it's just a simple glossary to help you know what the terms are. It's good for what it does. This chapter defines cisgender, LGBTQ+, and queer. Cisgender is just someone who is not trans. It means that your gender aligns with the sex you were assigned at birth. LGBTQ+ is an initialization of identities. L for lesbian, G for gay, B for bi, T for trans, Q for queer questioning. And queer is now an identity, but it used to be used as a slur. Some LGBTQ+ people won't want you to use it, others will. You should make sure you pay attention to the person you're talking to so that way you don't offend anyone. And while reassuring you that you don't need to remember these terms, and she also discusses the importance of these terms, discussing how when you don't know those terms, you don't have the language to identify yourself and explain the things that you're feeling. A lot of people come out more than once where they originally thought they were a lesbian and then realized they were actually just a straight trans man, or vice versa, and several other different things. So the language and having these identities helps people know who they are and explain themselves, since in this cishet society, you kind of have to explain yourself if you're not cis and straight. Chapter 3, Coming Out as LGBTQ+. Straight people don't have to come out. So there's this huge reveal around if you're gay or trans or bi or whatever you identify as. And, the expectation is that you will be cis and straight, but that isn't always the case. The coming out process is also discussed. I actually really like how she put it. There are 6 stages: identity confusion, identity comparison, identity tolerance, identity acceptance, identity pride, and identity synthesis. Now, I didn't really go through any of these stages when I first realized that I was pan. Because I thought that was normal. I thought everyone was pan because I had never been told otherwise. And so I didn't go through those stages with my sexuality, but I feel like it was very relatable for going through my gender identity. Of course, the first stage, identity confusion, is when you start to realize that maybe you're not like all your other peers. Identity comparison, comparing your identity, trying to figure it out. Identity tolerance is when you're just like, yeah, it's okay to be gay, but I'm not. Identity acceptance is when you realize what you are and accept it within yourself. Identity pride is when you scream it from the rooftops. You're telling everyone because you can finally be yourself. And then identity synthesis is the last stage where you're like, yeah, I'm gay, but I don't need to scream it from the rooftops. LGBTQ plus people come out over and over again. It's a lifelong process. Just because you come out to your family doesn't mean you don't have to come out to your friends, and you'll have to come out to every new person you meet. Although sometimes you won't tell the new person you meet because, they're just a store clerk. But every new person that comes into your life, you have the option to either come out to them or not. And coming out isn't always the goal. Sometimes, you don't want to come out. It's not safe for you to come out. You just don't want to. And that is the decision of the queer person. It's their decision to come out. You can't make them come out. It's up to them. She also discusses what to and not to say to someone who comes out to you. I think she did very good in covering that, and I enjoyed reading it, and it made sense. And finally, the last chapter in Becoming Knowledgeable Allies is chapter 4, Orientations, Identities, Behaviors, Oh My. She discusses a simplified diagram for sex, gender expression, attraction, and intimate behaviors. This diagram is very, very simplified, and it implies that femininity and masculinity are 2 separate things. You can't have a bit of both. It's just very, very simplified and isn't the best diagram out there. But it works for the base understanding. It works for an introductory diagram. And then she goes over where she falls on these diagrams before showing us a more complex one, which I prefer the more complex one. It makes more sense to me. I like it better, and I feel better represented using it. After going through all that, she answers a handful of questions like what is non-binary, if trans people can also be gay, and if asexual people could have sex. I personally identify as gender fluid, which is under the non-binary umbrella. Non-binary is when you don't identify as either male or female, or maybe you identify as both. It's just that you don't identify exclusively as male or female. Trans people can also be gay. You could be a trans woman and be a lesbian. You can be a trans man and be gay. You could be trans and be bisexual. Trans people can be gay. It's not unheard of. And then asexual people means asexual people don't have sexual attraction to others, or they have very, very little sexual attraction to others. This is a very base definition, but because it's about attraction, if they want to have sex, they can. And that is the end of this review. I will have a part 2 next Wednesday, but until then, I do recommend this book, and bye.